So tonight I've got Overlap Rugby back again. I think they over their training, and I'm sure they're super excited for the Rugby World Cup coming up in the next couple of days.
Absolutely.
Couldn't be more excited, especially Saturday. What a day we have in store on Saturday.
My hands are out of frame. I'm actually rubbing them right now because it's so soon. The World Cup Eve. It's literally a day away, one sleep away.
Yeah.
I've been counting sleep since about 4 or 5 months ago. So
I know.
If you could get a little countdown clock on the corner, it's getting to that climactic point where it's
no days.
Yeah.
Oh, insane. We're here.
So what I was thinking is, there's been a lot of preview and review shows, in these last couple of. I just want to say welcome to Modern Bok and Mark. There's been a lot of preview and review shows, and a lot of people have been speaking about it, and everyone's got their opinion about, mostly speaking about the South Africa All Blacks game.
Yes,
but, that has been the headline stealer. Yeah.
And that's probably right.
I thought let's chat about a few things that have come up in the news that concerned me, and it got my back up a little bit, but I didn't get caught up in it. But it was the media in Ireland really focusing in on the drug abuse and steroid use in schoolboy rugby and with the South Africans in general. And I just wanted to hear what your take was on it.
Yeah, well, personally, very disappointed. It's a sort of a number of organizations in Ireland. It's predictable. We've actually seen them go down this route before.
Yeah.
But from what I can gather, all of this seems to be based on 3 facts, and if you can call them facts, there's 2 real facts and 1 nonsense.
Yeah.
So we have a Pee-wee Gianti testing positive and his B-test sample testing positive through steroids. And then we have some stories from recent years about South African schoolboys testing positive.
Yes.
And then we have a viral
Instagram photo
of the Springboks shirtless in their team room, looking jacked, ready for the World Cup, looking huge. And the Irish media has just decided to sort of, around those 3 facts, craft a narrative of South African rugby being this, they would use the sort of salacious term, they just have a problem with drugs in South African rugby, and then interpret that as you will.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's spiraling to the point where they're just saying de facto the Boks are on drugs.
Yeah, well, the inference is rotten, really, in it. And to have the audacity to turn up to a Springbok press conference and have the 2 people probing for answers, and those ones to be Irish journalists loosely in this instance, really gets my goat up as well, because you're right in saying it's based loosely on it's speculation around. There are some facts. Gianti obviously was his thing has tested positive, but we still don't know the whole full story there. And like we actually did mention that on our podcast a while ago, and it was all in due deference to the fact that we're not doing the research. We're just finding this news as it comes out, and we can't. Like, we're not going into South African rugby in depth, undercover, trying to. And I'm sure there are people doing that, journalistic people endeavoring across many countries to try and get answers to this. And if you're not willing to do that work, then you really shouldn't be turning up in a capacity as a journalist to try and throw that out there. You
shouldn't be just commenting on a public forum that these guys are maybe guilty. Like, it's a kind of a gross thing, and it does stand in the way of people trying to do honest reporting on it. And if it's a story that's real, the thing to do isn't to lazily speculate that it's real; it's to actually find out.
Yeah,
and those guys doing that work are the guys that need to be respected and have deference given to them. But they're sort of like, you can take one look at the Pee-wee Gianti situation in particular, and you can go a couple of different directions with it. One narrative that you could go with is, this is a guy who was Breakthrough Player of the Year. He's got injured. He really wants to get back for the World Cup.
Yeah,
he's struggling with his injury. He needs to be at that level. Maybe he cuts a few corners. Maybe he takes a sample or takes a supplement that's a bit dodgy because someone gives it to them and says that'll get you there. If that's the case, that's irresponsible on his part, and he's going to do the punishment.
But it's not. It's also not endemic.
It could be that. It could be more a broader problem. It could be endemic. You could see this as part of the whole team. But there's no evidence that it's either of those things. And you could choose one or the other direction to go for. And I think that Irish media guys are choosing to go in the direction of this is endemic. Not because the evidence is there, but just because that's the sexier story.
Yeah.
And it's not there. They don't have the evidence for it, but they're reporting on it as if it's true, and it's disappointing.
That's what's pretty shameful.
I would think that you, Don, would probably be able to give us a little bit color about what the situation
is.
Well,
I know that six kids were picked up in Kruidenburg last year in 2018, which was even a shock in South African media, because that's a lot at one tournament. Now, obviously, kids fall under different rules and around the world. They're protected. You can't really test them at school. Because you just can't, you've got to go through their parents, and there's a whole thing. But because it was done by SARU, they could test the kids. And I think this year they did 110 tests at Kruidenburg this year. And I don't think they picked up any. I could be wrong, but I don't think they did, because they did realize it was a problem. And look, I'm glad it's been brought out in the open, because I think it is a bit of a problem. But my major concern is because I almost got caught into a huge big argument with someone in comments, which is like, on YouTube is rule number one: never get into an argument.
You can't be doing that.
And it's because the comment stated says, well, they're bigger than us, they're stronger than us. The writing's on the wall. That's and I sat back and I thought, when I was 17 and I was 6'2", I was 105. So by that assumption, I must have been taking steroids too. So, and I know I wasn't. So.
It is nonsense. But you're right. Like that context is right. It's the kind of stuff that like you might overhear in a bar around match time and stuff. You'd hear a few lads speculating like that wildly at a bar, drunkenly as well, and you're going like, well, even at that time, I find it a little bit in poor taste. But that's the place you'd expect to be hearing it, not, as you say, broadcast as if it were journalism or as if it were news. Yeah. Because I even resent the fact that this has been coming up as, it's a big news story in Ireland. It's not a news story. They haven't actually done any of the work required to find any news. They're just talking as people would in a bar. And that's what's a bit annoying to me more than anything else. Yeah. And even if there is even a nugget of truth to it, no credit should fall to Off the Ball or any of the other Irish journalists who've kind of jumped on this bandwagon, because it's not like they've broken the story. Like, even if it does come out 6 months down the line that maybe there's more of a problem than people thought, that's not on them. They haven't actually done that report. So that's what was bugging me all through the week about it, because I was very happy.
I'm just glad it's out in the open. I think it's something that needs to be dealt with. I think a lot of issues are, especially in South African schools, we have some really good feeder schools that go like Paul Boys, Grace College. These are world-class schools, and nowadays their coaches aren't teachers; they're coaches. So there might be a lot of pressure put on the kids, and a 14-year-old, in my mind, doesn't decide to take anabolic steroids. He must be supplied it by someone.
Yeah, 100%.
So it'd be nice that not only do they deal with the issue at hand, but also deal with the pressure that's been put on the kids, and B, where they're getting it from. So I'm glad it's happened, because I think it's something that should be dealt with. I just think painting the whole Springbok team that they're all dopers is a little bit.
No,
unfair.
That's a lot.
That's a gross way to go about it. But it's absolutely necessary that the right authorities look into these things, and that reporters are motivated to try and dig and find information and talk to young rugby players and find out what they're doing and what the kind of culture is around them, because there's no question that parking all the South African news and everything that's just around the world, rugby is a sport that is open to doping. I mean, we know how big a thing doping is in global sport, especially sport where there's money involved, and that as the stakes get higher, it becomes more of an issue, and it's absolutely something you don't want in the game, and something that sides, around the world could be exploiting. So it's important to have systems in place and people eyeballs scrutinized on that particular issue is a big thing.
And to be honest, even like you were alluding to with the schoolboy thing, the fact that you can't really monitor it much at schoolboy level. When you're in countries, all manner of countries have schoolboy events that are held in high esteem. They may not be professional, and so they can't be regulated as such, but there'll be very competitive schools and guys going too far, and they're like all these little environments that also need to be checked and monitored. And there may be a bad culture that exists in one school in one part of South Africa or anywhere, but that doesn't reflect actually the whole culture of either South African rugby, or certainly not the Springboks, which is the inference that is being kind of tethered just wrongly as well. So there's just there's no real evidence to it, and it really did get our goat up as well, because we did cover the Dianti thing as it broke last week, but did it in a bit more of a standoffish kind of way because we just don't know, and we were happy to park this whole issue for the World Cup, but then our own media doing us in.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
We'll try and move on and set.
You know what? Let's just put a pin in it. Let's put a pin in it and say, there we go, done. We'll move on. We'll just focus in on the actual games and we'll take it from there.
Great. Yeah, that's what we want to be doing.
In the spirit of both of our podcasts and shows, and that's what it's more about.
Okay, so I think the next thing I wanted to talk about, because I'd actually forgotten that the third person in a group actually qualifies for the next Rugby World Cup. Yeah. So I always thought it was the first two, and then when I was doing some reading, and I thought, the top three. So it actually makes, like for an Italy and all of those things, that they must really be vying to try to get that.
It adds the pools have World Cup finals of sorts for the tier 2 nations in qualifying, in trying to get that third spot. That's what's coveted, and that's like Fiji failed to get it the last time out, which is what has them in the group, same group as Georgia now, which is an interesting dynamic. They'll have to wrestle to try and get that third spot underneath the two big teams.
It's actually become, last World Cup, it was quite a big deal when Georgia beat Tonga, and that was basically for that automatic qualifying spot. But actually this World Cup, the pools have a slightly different dynamic, where I think the tier 2 side that would normally be pushing for that is actually pushing for a quarter final. So if you look at like the Pool A group, you've got Japan, who are in behind Scotland and Ireland, and they're the hosts. They really, really want to make the quarters. Whether or not it happens remains to be seen, but they would not be satisfied with third.
I wouldn't put it past them, though.
Oh, not at all. Well, this is it. Like third is their minimum bar, which they do want to secure at least third and be sure of getting into the next World Cup in France. But that's not what they're aiming for. They're looking, their sights are aimed higher.
Indeed. And then in Pool B, it's just sort of Italy are going to get third. They're probably not going to be able to go near All Blacks or South Africa, and they'll also just be way too good for Canada and Namibia. And Pool 3 has a similar dynamic with 3 tier 1 nations in the one group. It's all about that scramble for the quarters.
Which makes actually this weekend's game between France and Argentina very, very interesting, because the loser of it will probably be securing third in that pool, unless they don't stop this mad England team, this big England team.
And then even in Pool D, I mean, I think Georgia right now, given their pre-World Cup form, would probably, if they were offered third, they might take it.
They definitely
would. But Fiji in particular, I think, would be looking to rock over either Wales or Australia, and would really fancy themselves quietly for a quarterfinal.
I know we're going to be talking about the games shortly, but I think Fiji are targeting Australia. I think Australia. I think they're open for it. They're open for it. I think they are targeting that as their tier 1.
I think, the fun thing about Fiji is that they don't exert a massive amount of energy when they play well. So I actually think they're like, if it goes wrong against Australia, they'll be gutted, but they will reset and go again against Wales. Like they have big performances in them. And I think, they are going to be gunning for Australia. They'll see Australia as a little vulnerable.
I just don't see them getting through Wales.
Well, they'll give it a go. That's the thing. They will give it a go.
The thing about Wales is they defend quite narrow, and they're used to a Six Nations where teams attack quite narrow. And both Fiji and Australia, when it comes to Wales's perspective, will attack them in different areas. And like there are question marks over their wide defending when teams challenge them there. And Fiji really do have a tier 1 level attack when it all gets going. Like they're maybe a tier 2 side, but a lot of those players are playing European rugby at the top level and standing out in their respective teams. Very often in Edinburgh, you have Mata, and he's like the best player on their team, their key playmaker. Yato in Claremont is something similar.
One of their best
players, Radradra. Like they everywhere they go, they tend to be the standout stars and really playmakers. So they can get stuff off against any teams.
Looking through that team, the loose forwards, and you'd almost include Nakarawa in the second row as a loose forward. And then that whole back line, there's just danger all over it. Like if Fiji click, they can score tries against anyone. Any team in the world. They are that talented, truly.
But the question mark, like Australia, Cheika gets his teams very well drilled, especially when he's in camp for this long going into a World Cup. They'll be looking to target, like a good offensive mauling is a big part of Brumbies rugby, and it'll probably be a big part they're trying to target against Fiji. Scrums as well, but mainly kind of offensive mauls, because that's not where Fiji like to be defending at all. Australia will be coming at it tactically, thinking that they can outdo what Fiji are going to bring. But under John McKee, Fiji have been putting more of an emphasis on scrum time, much more of an emphasis on line speed and defence, particularly in their 22. Their win in Paris last November was testament to that. There was a great defensive showing, which is not something you're used to a Fiji side showing, but it's good layers built coming into this World Cup. They still have all the bags of talent, but they have a bit more kind of drills and grit. And I see this match as a very, very interesting one. Australia,
I just think probably there's a couple of things. The Pocock factor is huge. Fiji are going to have to keep that ball away from the breakdowns because he will snap up the ball. And then just watching them against both Argentina this year for that lovely try that with the line break by Corabetti, and then obviously that game against the All Blacks in Perth. I actually think their attack is looking pretty smooth and pretty slick. Yeah. And it could be too much for Fiji's defense. I think they could actually find some tries and some successes in there. Well, so I would still tip Australia to win, but I think either way, fun game.
I think the money would be on that. I think Fiji's set piece has improved. Yeah. They weren't really known as a set piece kind of team, but at least they've got a scrum now, they've got a line out. So
but there's levels in this game, and like at the end of the PNC, their scrum was under pressure from Samoa's scrum in their final game in the PNC, and that's a bit worrying as well.
Also, people are one of the untold narratives of this season has actually been, and actually the last couple of seasons in this World Cup cycle has been the improvement of Australia at set piece. They've built off that Brumbies momentum. Scott Seo was a great scrummager from loosehead, and they actually have a very good maul as well. So if they need to take the game there, they can. And especially against a side like Fiji, like sometimes they struggle in that area against the best of the best, your South Africas and Englands and All Blacks. But against Fiji, they will definitely think they have an advantage in the tight five and in the mauls and scrums. And they can take the game there as well.
I'd be inclined to agree. But it's I'm curious to see if they even try to replicate some of the pace that Japan brought against Fiji in the game earlier on in the season, where they just opened very quickly and made their defense, which is normally quite structured and quite fast, look all over the place. Or they may take it and slow it down, like you're saying, go through a set piece route. I just see there's more avenues for Australian success than there are for Fiji. But at the same time, I can see the picture in my mind of it all going wrong for the Wallabies and simultaneously going very right for the Fijians. And it would be a World Cup festival kind of atmosphere if that starts to happen. And the crowd will get behind Fiji if they do get one or two glorious tries against them. So
no question.
Like there are avenues for success for tier 2 sides like Fiji, but similarly Japan as well, because they play attacking footy, and if they do get their tries, they'll cause Wallabies problems.
Whether or not Fiji get the win, and likewise with Japan, they're sure to be minor stories in this World Cup because they play such entertaining football. They're going to score wonderful tries, and they are going to capture people's imaginations because they're going to make a go of it. I think both sides, whether or not they can get there is another question.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. Attacking rugby is the more attractive brand of rugby. So
it is. Certainly for the neutral, that's what's going to rope them in.
Yeah, and we also have a little pet theory on our podcast that if you're a tier 2 side, if you're going into a match convinced that you're just not on the level, and it comes up every year with us because we always think it when Italy face England or something in Twickenham. And it's like whenever they start kicking 3-pointers in the first half, you just know that's pointless, lads. You're not going to be in it at 60 minutes if you're doing that. You're so far removed that just go to the corner, go for tries. And if you play with that philosophy, like Japan do, like Fiji do, you can catch the big guns cold. If you catch them cold, you can score those tries. It only has to go right for 3 minutes or 5 minutes before you register a try or 2 tries. And then suddenly that can be 14 points or 21 if it's 3 tries, and then you're in the game. Whereas if you're going to try and play a very controlling game at tier 2 level, a slow bludgeoning game, like what the US bring, or like Georgia will try to bring, you're just less likely to get anything off against the top sides because you're going to be shocked by the physicality. And just the game has to go your way for much longer than if you're just going to shock them with a couple of tries.
So it gives them a chance.
So I'm always encouraged by tier 2 sides that like to throw the ball around, which is why I feel bad for Uruguay. Little Uruguay are a great team for throwing the ball around, but they're in with Georgia and Fiji and then Wales and Australia. So despite them being an entertaining attacking side, they're not a hope of getting a win against anyone, but they might grab a lovely worldie of a try, which would be enough for me.
Uruguay will be a fun.
I could see them maybe getting like try out the tournament or something like that.
Yeah, something like
You
that.
never know.
In a 90,
yeah.
90-point defeat, but they grabbed a worldie
Yeah,
try.
There was a great try that Japan scored against Wales in 2007.
Yes.
Wales actually stuffed Japan, but it's one of the great World Cup tries. If you ever look it up from the 2007 tournament, Japan going coast to coast against Wales. It was a phenomenal score, and it'd be fun to see the tier 2 teams bring a lot of that.
Yeah, hopefully, because it's going to be a dry track for the most part. There will be some storms and some wetness.
I think
this weekend's to be wet, but I think as the pool stages progress, we will have kind of conditions that will be suitable. Yeah, they'll be suitable for running rugby. So we hope we see a bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, guys, before we carry on, in case I get kicked off, because it has happened before, and you're still on, if you could just carry on with it, and I'll try connect, because
we'll do our best. Yeah.
I've switched off everything on my machine, and I've restarted my machine, switched off everything, and just in case. But
yeah.
I'll try to get back on.
Happen, but yeah, we'll try and keep it afloat.
If so, and then likewise, if anything drops at our end, but we're all kind of wired up. We're a maze of computers and wires and lights and things. So yeah, should be fine.
What do you think? Well, why don't we just go through the games until Wales, Georgia? We'll just a quick prediction about the games.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys do Super Brew or anything like that.
We don't, but we have a little family pool going in our own family.
We do,
on all the predictions, and I've been back and forth on some of them. Some of them are so damn tough.
I'm probably going to change some before. I'm going to flip flop on a few of them before the opening ceremony tomorrow. But definitely do have a few little predictions already. I suppose we'll start with the opening game.
Japan, Russia.
I'm most curious about what the opening ceremony looks like, because I'm pretty sure I know what the game's going to look like. I backed them to do a great opening ceremony. I also backed them to put a cricket score on Russia, because I've watched a bit of Russia over the last few weeks. In prep, I watched them play Italy. They shipped 85 points against Italy at home. Then they lost to the Jersey Reds at home in Moscow. Then they lost to Connacht, both provincial sides and not particularly dominant ones at all. So they're coming in. They didn't even get into the World Cup based on merit. They got in based on more kind of clerical merit. Based on ineligible players in other teams. So they're really here just to take part. And it means that it's a great chance for Japan and players like Utamura and their backline to get firing, put a show on, put a bit of a spectacle on.
I think it's important that Japan play well. I think momentum is so big in these tournaments, and they've got a good chance to get some in the opening game. It's a nice, easy start for them. They've got Ireland coming next week. Mm-hmm. If they stutter in this game and then get blown away by Ireland, all of a sudden a lot of the feel-good energy, especially off the back of that South African performance at the start of last month, could get sucked out of where Japan are. So I think it's important that they actually start with a bit of helter-skelter, running rugby, getting the likes of Matsushima on the right wing, who's a lovely footballer on the ball, and just dominate that game and rack up a cricket score. Then the feel good factor is there. Then it doesn't matter so much what happens against Ireland, and then they can have a nice run into the Samoa and Scotland games, which will be huge for them trying to get out of the pool.
Yes,
I put in my prediction that I was being actually quite kind to Russia. I'd said 22 points would be the spread.
Yeah,
I was being quite.
I'd back them to beat that. To be honest, Japan to beat that. If that's the spread, I'd be thinking closer to 30 plus.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Just looking at this, that's what Connacht did to them. And Japan are better than Connacht.
And they're at home,
and it's the opening day of their World Cup. I'd expect.
Yeah, just don't want any nerves. Just don't want any Japanese nerves, because that's the kind of thing that could just seep through them.
Yeah,
they need to just get started off to a flyer, get some tries on the board, and then they'll be feeling confident. If they want to be in a World Cup quarterfinal, they want to be doing to Russia what tier 1 sides will do to Russia.
And at that, it'll be annoying if 20 minutes drift by and maybe they're 5-3 up or 6-3 up or something like that. That'll be kind of throwing water on their fire and raining on their parade in exactly that.
Point a minute.
Yeah, they'll be thinking a point a minute. But because they do attack. They go attack, and normally they do it from the opening whistle. And I expect Russia will not be able to live with them at all. I don't really foresee any upsets from Russia this World Cup.
No.
I think we're all pretty pretty settled on that one.
Yeah, that's some of our less controversial opinions.
Yeah. We sort of touched on Australia, Fiji already. I would just say for a prediction, I'm leaning towards Australia with a bonus point. But I like every time I think about it, I come up with a different answer. I think most likely is Australia with a bonus point, but take it with a grain of salt because Fiji, when they click, are very, very good.
Yeah. It's not inconceivable that both sides get bonus points in this fixture as well.
It's a fun thought.
It is a fun thought. It could end up being a little kind of shootout because they both like playing that attacking style. But I'm with you. The closer we've got to this World Cup, because all throughout our podcast, it's been a trait to like look at the Wallabies and think, God, they're getting a lot of things wrong. What if Georgia might get them in the World Cup? But the closer I get, and the more I've watched between Tier 1 and Tier 2 sides, there seems to be a bit of a gulf. And the Wallabies have World Cup pedigree, and they'll not be going there with just to make up the numbers. They'll be trying to take Wales and avoid England in the quarter.
The sharpness of some of the tries Australia have scored this year. That try against Argentina, actually, that when Curtly Beale came off the bench against the Box, in that it was a poor performance by them, but when Beale came on and got that really sharp try, they're just, when their offense clicks, it is way too much for what the Tier 2 defenses can do, and it's at a level that Tier 2 defenses just don't get presented with very often.
Yeah.
They like to play little disguise plays. They like to hide their wingers, usually Corbetti, in behind the blind side of the ruck, and then have them come flying on the outside shoulder of the 10.
Yeah.
And it's just those little plays that they do at 100 miles an hour. You saw them in the last World Cup catching England off with them.
Yes.
Set plays with runners coming from everywhere. And then when it clicks, they just link up, fix the man, try on the board, and they can be ruthless, Australia.
Yeah, and
so I actually think
his whole career, he comes up with some pretty devastating strike moves off phase one and in the multi-phase. Like they're great attackers. And I expect them to have a bit of distance, like maybe 10 to 15 point win. I'm leaning towards, which would be stuttery, but Australia would definitely take it.
They take it. If they come to a bonus point, they'll take it. Yeah.
But it's a difficult pool to navigate for both Australia and Wales, and throwing a big Fiji bomb in there is one reason for that. Like, you never really quite know what to expect moment to moment or game to game with Fiji, and that's enough to scare any Tier 1 side. Like, a lot of these guys know these players, and like Radradra's lining up on the wing for them this time, but that's a matchup that either Corbetti or Hodge won't particularly enjoy.
Hodge or Radradra's head.
Yeah, like it's tough. Like, they have some world-class players, they really do, and they will try and attack. But ultimately, I think the difference in tier, I suppose, will tell. That Australia will have a little bit too much for Fiji.
Yeah,
But
I think I put it 2 scores that I think at 8 points or 9 points that I put on the spread. I think it depends. It depends how. I think it depends on Australia. Depends how ruthless they want to be.
Yeah, and obviously it depends on how sharp Fiji are, because Fiji can look great when they're sharp, and then when they're not sharp and things are a little loose and they're dropping balls, then all of a sudden it can be chaotic and bad. Yeah. So you wouldn't want to see that either. But if Fiji play well and Australia are a little sluggish, that's the picture.
And that's going to be the thing for any Tier 1 v Tier 2 clash. That is what has to happen before it gets truly, truly competitive. Is you're catching the Wallabies or the Tier 1 side a little rusty, a little sluggish, slow starting, inaccurate, and at the same time you are being crisp and accurate with everything you're trying to do and executing properly. Then the Tier 2 sides do have a chance, and they can win those games. But shy of those conditions, you're not really going to see it. You're going to see the class tell.
Yeah. I think the next game is, that's another big one, France-Argentina.
Yeah, I actually think France-Argentina is quietly the biggest game this weekend, because they are 2 big sides who've gone very deep in the tournament in the past and have the capacity to go, as far as the semi-final, final stage. And yet after this weekend, after this game, which is the 3rd game in the tournament, it's entirely likely that one of those sides is going to be pretty much done. I mean, they have 1 game left against an England side that is looking, to be honest, better than both of these teams. And then that could be it. Yeah. So this is a game that could be a straight shootout for a quarterfinal, and we could be saying very early in the tournament farewell to one of 2 great sides. Yeah. And we had been leaning France on this one, but we actually just got the selection news in today. And one of the things that I had been enjoying is the nice 3-quarter line, 10, 12, 13. That was Cami Lopez and Wesley Fofana and Sofiane Gatoun. None of those guys are playing. They've put Roman Ntamack, the young man, in a 10, who's actually more... It is a massive call. And then they put the Fijian lad Vakatawa in at 12 and Gail Fiku in at 13. And when you consider the fact that this is their biggest game, it seems a bit of a mad selection. It could work. There are some good players in there, but it definitely throws a spanner in the works.
It does, yeah. Again, like what I was being so optimistic and full of bluster about France. I always fear France. It's an innate Irish quality in me. I know that they have literally hundreds of quality players at their disposal, and it's frustrating when they get that selection wrong. But I was prefacing my thoughts on some of this rugby they've shown over the last few during the warm-ups, but even towards at the end of the Six Nations, they were stringing a few things together. Toulouse's great season, Claremont's great season, all of it could have manifested itself, and still could, to be fair. Like they put a lot of trust in Fiku, even though I've not fully seen what his contribution has been. I think he's been okay in his contributions in the jersey there, but they have a lot of. It's always a tough call with France. I do think they have a stronger scrum than Argentina, which is something you wouldn't necessarily have said at previous World Cups, which if the game becomes error-filled and about that does favour the French still. Yeah. But in terms of those centres, that's a new combination. A lot falls on the centres in terms of getting out in the face of the Argentinians and shutting out their access to the wide channels, which is where they like to attack. Are they up to the task of stopping that, or are we finally going to see the Argentinians get their hands warm and get some tries on the board, normally through attacking out wide, where we know their quality is undeniable.
There's no question if Argentina click, they have the quality. France, there's a curious dynamic up front. I think France are going to want this to be about the forwards a little more than Argentina will, and they probably have a bigger, stronger pack. But I actually think the best forward on the pitch is going to be an Argentinian, Pablo Matera. He's a really great player, so physical in defense, and his performance is going to color a lot of this. If he can get in, if he can jackal, if he can spoil, if he can lead the defense and shut France out, and just not allow France to get those forward carries going around the corner, not allow them any quick ball or quick momentum, a lot of that's going to fall on Matera, and if he can do that, that'll be better for Argentina.
For me, if I look at it, I go, if we haven't seen Argentina for about 3-4 weeks, no, it must be a bit longer than that. If they've got at least got their scrum sorted, that they're not going backwards. I think that could be it's a good start. And if they can just
go ahead.
If they can stay in the even if they just get channel one ball, and if they're being attacked, if they're on a defensive scrum, that they don't go backwards, there's no penalties, then I think they stand a decent chance. If Lavanini can handle himself in the one thing I've missed about Lavanini is obviously he doesn't get yellow cards nowadays, but he's not as aggressive as he used to be. So he needs to find that balance between Bakis Buerta and Eben Etzebeth. You know what I mean? That balance.
He still gives away a lot of penalties. Like I see, there were still a few times in this Rugby Championship where he gave away like consecutive penalty infringements, which were annoying. I mean, he still is bothersome in there. And I just think like the French scrum isn't to be slept on either, because it's not just better than Argentina's, like it's one of the best out there. Poirot at least is a tiger, and Slimani is as experienced as they come, and he is actually really wily. I think he has Georgian blood in him, and he's very likely to cause them problems there.
They all have a tradition of scrummaging for penalties. Like scrums don't mean the same thing in France as they do pretty much anywhere else in the world. Like if you're in the top couture, you know that a scrum is an attritional battle that's going to be there. And similarly, if you have a French ref, you need to factor that into how you're at scrum time, even if you're a team not from there. They have a proper interpretation of it that means it's very competitive. They want to see an out-and-out winner of a scrum even before the ball comes out. So if the Argentinians are a little lacking in that area, as good as the French backs are and as exciting as they are when they get flowy, they will want to scrum for penalties and kick themselves in the right area before they engage with that. But then even at that, if the Argentinians can get a little bit of parity or stem some of that, or if the game just happens elsewhere, if there aren't that many drop balls and therefore not that many scrums, it could come down to which backlines are just that little bit sharper. And they're both quite similar in that regard. Like when they're hot, they're almost irresistible and great to look at both sides. And when they're not, they're really not. Like they're a bit kind of floundersome and things fall apart because they do try things. So it's a tough one to call. It really is.
I totally agree with that. I think ultimately it's going to be about which attack is sharper and actually which defense is going to be better suited towards shutting down the opposition, because obviously we know Argentina are going to go wide. We know France are going to like flood certain channels with loads of players, and whichever defense copes with each other's style is going to be probably victorious, because I think once there's line breaks, there's tries for everybody.
I see that, Mark. Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree a little. We've been done in by French refs before at club and country level.
Yeah.
Look, I've watched some top 14 games, and I know there's some cities in the top 14. If they have 80 scrums in a row, they're happy.
Yeah, totally.
I think scrumming for them is like a religion.
Yeah.
So, but I think for the Argentinians, I think Sanchez has to click. He hasn't clicked for a while.
We're waiting for that all season long. It hasn't been there. He's still their best chance, because when he does click, he'll be the best 10 on the park. No doubt. Correct. Even if Lopez had been starting, I think I would have given that nod. When Sanchez is on, he is world class.
Yeah, I just hope that he clicks, because if he clicks, he can get that back line. Because I think the Argentinian back line is devastating. I think they can cut through anyone.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, especially those wingers. It's like De La Fuente and Orlando are really classy guys themselves, but a lot of what they do is about getting the ball to that back three with like that 2-on-1 on, and then like when Mojano was hot, and even Moroni, but Mojano especially when that guy clicks, he is lightning. He'll get you with chips over the top. He's got wonderful footwork. I remember the weaving try scored against the All Blacks last year. Put him in space, and there are tries there for him to finish.
And it's like all throughout the back line, and even some of the forwards as well. Argentinians are great footballers. They're all capable of dropping it on the toe for the winger to chase as well. It's like, it's not a percentage play for a lot of other teams, but they're such good footballers that if the space is in behind, they will drop it on the toe. And similarly, Buffelli, as well as the wingers, Big Boot Buffelli has driven Tuchelet, who's one of my favorite, like classy operators from fullback. There's no room for him in the team, and that's right, because Buffelli's season has been pretty undeniable. He's a big physical guy, kicks balls from the 60-meter line, and is also a real attacking threat.
Oh, he's a lovely runner.
He's a very balanced fullback. Yeah. And a lot of the game will hinge on getting his hands on the ball in space with a winger on his side and a centre on his inside, and just options, because they will try to attack out wide, which is why, like, the French don't have a reputation for the most vicious of line speed, apart from in certain games in the Six Nations when it's all very narrow and bottled up, and they can be very difficult to attack in those narrow channels. But Argentina will look to test them out further wide and move them around the park. And when you do get your hands warm and get a bit of phase play together, the French defense can be pulled a bit this way and that, and can lose their shape.
The other thing that I would say for France is obviously they like to flood those channels. The two wingers are to be watched out for. They're both lethal. I mean, Huget is a bit of a mad character. We all know Huget, but when he's on it, when he's on it, the guy is pretty undeniable himself. He's a very good finisher, and he will score tries. And
but he does some strange things.
Yes, he does.
Oh,
yes,
he
does. And he could be their undoing or their hero. We don't know yet.
And that can happen within one play.
Yeah.
You know,
and Pinot himself on the other wing is actually really, really good.
He's one of my favorite players at the moment. He can play 13, has done for Clermont before, but is a classy operator from the wing. Reminds me a little of Tommy Bowe, actually, former Ireland international. Really does have sniffs a tryout from everywhere, wonderful balanced runner, and deceptively physical in the contact. So they try and take both those wingers off the wing periodically to create these little overlaps in narrow channels in and around the midfield to the wing, and just get these guys kind of stacking up 5 against 4, even in tight spaces.
And you know what helps them in that department is the all skills, all high flying Fijian Virami Vakatawa at 12, who we didn't see coming, but is definitely going to feed into their offloading game.
Yeah.
So you would expect France to be looking for line breaks, and they're actually up there with the All Blacks in terms of turning line breaks into tries. Once they get that space, and they will have support runners there, it's instinctive, and they do finish tries when they're given to them. So it's a game of great attacks. And in terms of calling it, I've been veering back and forth. I think France, but it's so close.
Yeah, it is so close.
I put France by less than a converted try.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it could be a one-score game, and I think it could, like, if, like you're saying, with the All Blacks, New Zealand is obviously, before the tournament starts, that's your game of the tournament. But if the rain falls and it ends up, the spectacle gets spoiled a little, I don't think that'll be a fear for this game. I think they're both going to throw it around regardless of what happens, and it's going to be made a slightly more accurate team win. And I'm thinking that might be France, just based on a few things. The scrum is obviously a big thing I go back to, watching that Argentinian scrum go backwards. And like all those great Argentinian World Cup campaigns, that, like, they've always had great backs, but they have always had a very aggressive, near dominant scrum. to be taken to the World Cup. This is the first World Cup in my memory that Argentina are coming with that as a perceived weakness. And I think that could be the difference between the two. Also, France have a load of quality players and a load of new quality players. Antoine Dupont from 9, watch out for him. He is absolutely electric. And if Argentina are a little soft around the fringes or loose around the fringes, he'll punish them there.
No question.
I think there are a few for a few different reasons. I'm just edging towards France, but I could be wrong. Could easily be wrong.
So there you go. Take that with a grain of salt.
Yes.
Okay, so now we get to I'd probably say the biggest game this weekend.
The two best teams,
Definitely.
no question. I mean, to seeing Messers, New Zealand and South Africa, All Blacks and Springboks going at it is always a treat in a World Cup, even more so. So it's it's a crazy fun dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think both teams have. I think they've both put in their strongest teams.
I agree.
I agree.
I look at the especially the midfield. I can see what they're trying to do with on the All Black side. But there's been quite a lot of interesting videos, especially the guys from the 10-14. They did such a nice video on the All Blacks attack, how they've changed from like a 1-3-3-1 to a 2-3-2 system. So it was very, very interesting. And but I still don't think that the All Blacks are going to show all their attacking moves this coming weekend. I think they're still going to hold something back.
I think if they've changed their structure so fundamentally, just in terms of where the pods are at, I think they probably will try and experiment it this week just to see if it works. I think they will. Like it's all about just moving that point of contact to where you think you have an advantage.
Yeah.
And against the Springboks, they couldn't get outside and they couldn't break them down on the inside with those giant forwards that are around the ruck. They couldn't get any go forward around the ruck. And then when they tried to go wide, and Delindy inside him were shutting everything down. Yeah. So maybe if they try like getting a few forwards matched up against Pollard, getting those sort of inside shoulder of Pollard between him and his forward pack, that could be an area to target. And I think just moving the pods around is going to try and facilitate that. Whatever sort of long plans are in place, like they'll move them around so that 3 phases from now we're going to isolate a weakness, probably on Pollard's inside shoulder.
Or Mapimpi's wing,
but it's just the
but
problem is just
trying to get outside arm.
They
didn't work the last time, but they will shift their pods around and probe. They also had different centres. Obviously, I found it surprising to see Goodhue, who I figured was their incumbent at 13, not getting the nod. Although I do like the centres named. I'll be interested to see who starts winning these collisions and where they're happening. Like the All Blacks, we were making the case that you could have picked TJ because TJ Perinara at 9, because he's a bit more confrontational and he's liable to get a steal if the box break through and get unsupported. He's as good as anyone to get that. They've gone with Aaron Smith, with Barrett at fullback and Mwanga, leads me to believe they're going to try and run them around a little bit. And without Brodie Retallick, they're probably wise to not want to be going at it straight, blunt in the tight.
I'll tell you what I don't like, and I'm curious to get your take on this, Don, is actually the bench. They've gone for Francois Steyn and Jesse Creel, which they've been doing quite a lot this season, which leads me to believe that at about 60 minutes, they're going to take off probably Delindy and they're going to take both of them off and they're going to completely change their centres and look to get a bit more through Franz Steyn, a little more distribution and a bit more offense going through their centres. And I think every time that they've done that this year, it hasn't quite gelled because it's a fundamental changing of how they're attacking. And more importantly, what's happened every time they've taken Am off in particular this season, as good as Jesse Creel is, it just opens up a bit every single time. And it's just if it's tight on that 60 minutes and they're like, okay, we'll take Am off. He's done his job. We're going to bring Jesse Creel in for some impact. You could just see that space open up a bit more in those wide channels. And that's all the All Blacks need. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how much I like Beauden Barrett at fullback. Yeah. He's one of the best, if not the best, attacking players in the world. And if you give him a sniff, as you saw in the game in Eden Park earlier in the year, it was one sniff, and that was all it took. He was gone, and he made a try. That's the kind of thing he can do. And with, really, really hot, really sharp wingers either side of him, Bridge and Reese, they're not going to make a mistake. If they get outside that 13 channel and get into those wide channels, they are going to find tries no matter what the Buck defense does. Yeah. So I was thinking about it
because obviously they're replacing 2 centers and I have been wondering about it for quite a while. Yeah. And I have a feeling I'm actually going to watch it this weekend that I think the 2 centers in the South African backline, because of how the defense works, that it's so tight. that you have to have really fit centres on scramble defence because they're going to get on the outside channels. And you can see that Am does almost get to the player, but not all the time. Like Bowden Barrett got around him. So I think... So I think that's why. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's why they're replacing the centres, because the centres just run out of energy.
Maybe there's something to that, but I haven't seen Am be too gassed in that channel, and what I think with Jesse Creel is that he's just not as physical. So even if he makes the right read and gets up and hits the guy, he's not ragdolling to the floor immediately, and the guy gets a chance to has 1 or 2 seconds to get his hands free, get an offload around, which is one side of it. But the other thing is those centres are steady and rock solid. The variable in the back line is Willie Leroux going to play well? Because if Willie Leroux doesn't play well, then the whole thing breaks down, and changing those 2 centres doesn't make a difference to it. So you need to have some cover back there for him.
Yeah, if you had someone, for example, like Sabu Nkosi on the bench, what you could do is, if Villy's going wrong or if Villy's getting tired, you can take Villy off, bring on Nkosi and put Colby at fullback.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's a lot more energy to it, and the centres can remain rock solid.
Yeah.
I do hear what you're saying on Am losing energy, but I just one too many times. It's actually Shane flagged it, and ever since he's flagged it on me, I've seen it constantly, is that Jesse Creel makes great reads but doesn't stick his tackles. And actually, once you notice that trend, you actually see it quite a bit.
Gary Ringrose does the same for us. Yeah. Makes great reads, doesn't quite stick his head tackles, whereas when Robbie Henshaw's there, they're wrapped up and down.
It's a theme. If you go back to I'm sure you wouldn't love to, Don, because it's got to be pleasant viewing, but if you go back to a lot of tries that the Springboks have conceded this whole cycle, going right the way back to the game against Japan in the last World Cup, it's actually Jesse Creel who makes a good read on Maffei for that final Japanese try that won them the game. Doesn't quite stick his tackle. Maffei gets away, draws the 2-on-1, and that's a try. And that's actually a consistent theme that's there, and it's something that Am's presence has solved. And I just think once you bring Creel on, it comes right back. And I do love Jesse Creel. He's got a lot of industry to him. I respect his hustle a lot, but I just not sticking those tackles becomes a problem.
Yeah, and also couple that with my thought, which is that if Villy goes great, he's the key to your offense. But that's a lot of responsibility on one man, and if he's a little bit off, it can all unravel very quickly. And to not have that viable of a backup for him in the match day 23, because you're obviously Franz Steyn can maybe slot into 10 and maybe pull Pollard to 15.
That's madness.
But it is madness.
You'd sooner just go Franz Steyn straight in at 15.
Maybe see that either, but it's a bit more improvisational with 2 centres occupying 2 of those bench spots. I think that's probably a focus in the wrong area, and it means you can't quite mix it up if things are going wrong with the offense. And as well as kind of sacrificing a bit on the defensive side too. So
yeah.
Look, I know. Obviously, Jesse Creel started his career off as a wing, so
yeah.
I think that's why he's there for cover on that side. I'd love to see Colby at 15. When he plays for Toulouse, he's just magnificent. And
against Italy, that'll be a fun one. If you play him at 15 against Italy, he might get a hat trick, and might be tournament top try scorer. But yeah, if it's one of those, if he impresses enough, he may get in there. But the plan coming in is obviously Willie Leroux, and it would just be nice to see them have mixed that up a little bit more and have scope to do it from the bench. Rather than bringing 2. I suppose you could put Jesse Creel on the wing and then shift Colby to fullback if you wanted to do that at the weekend.
That would make a lot more sense. I would actually be quite happy to see Jesse Creel come on the wing if need be for Mapimpi.
Maybe, yeah.
And then you could mess around thereafter, get Colby at fullback or something. It'll remain to be seen whether we're right about that.
This is it. It's just a hunch.
I definitely think that the All Blacks in that outside channel are going to be a lot more of a threat than they were when you guys met earlier in the season.
I think so. I think both teams are holding something back. We'll come through to Mark's question shortly. I think both teams are holding something back, big time, especially because I honestly thought Bowden Barrett was going to start this weekend at 10, but they're going to continue with the Richie Mo'unga. So I think they've had a plan in motion that they've been working for quite a while, and I think they're going to pull the trigger this weekend on it. And we're all going to find out what it is, and it's probably going to be sublime because it's the All Blacks.
Yeah, I definitely like Bowden Barrett at fullback. I've said it before, but I think he's really, really great, and I think it actually suits his skill set a little better than 10. And he's so quick.
But I think with the heavy rain, I think that's going to be the leveler. I don't think it's going to be attractive rugby at all. I really don't think so.
Well, then it'll fall on a Moanga Moanga / Barrett battle with Pollard / Villy to not just pass but kick them into the right areas, because both all of those players have an industrious enough kicking game and an eye for where the space is, and that'll be a big challenge because the margins will be so fine that a really good kind of touch finder at the right time could be very telling in the end. And I'm interested to see who gets the upper hand on that. Obviously, physicality will play a huge part. You can see 10s just lose control of a game when their pack's getting bullied, which
and that's
is
the lead.
enough.
Like that's the lead that we've been burying, is which pack is going to get on top. Obviously, the backline conversations are all very interesting, but the All Blacks have gone for Artie Savea at 6 and Sam Cane at 7. They've left Patrick Tuipulotu, who I thought might have done enough to get in there, but they brought back in Scott Barrett. And then obviously the Springboks are going with their Rolls Royce of a pack. See Khaleesi coming in. I mean, it's a massive, massive battle, and those collisions and set piece are going to determine a lot of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's be honest, though. We watched Richie Moore. I think he's an absolutely exceptional player. But when he plays with the Crusaders, he's playing essentially behind an All Blacks pack. They're always going forward, and every single game that he's been playing where his pack hasn't been dominant, he's been put under a lot of pressure. So I'm a bit concerned there. Look, it's just a red flag. It's nothing. I still think he's magnificent, and if he could always pull something special out of the bag. But I think it's going to come to. I like Ryan Crotty at 12. Who's playing 13?
Leonard Brown, who we like quite as well. He's a very good player, very, very good player.
I think that's magnificent. I really like Ryan Crotty. I think he's absolutely essential to the All Blacks.
Very savvy, great.
He's a very savvy guy. I'm just curious to see if they can get anything off. I mean, the box centers are so good defensively. I really thought that if he was fit, Sonny Bill was the guy, just because his offload game, keeping the ball alive, just gives them an option to do something different.
It also avoids that Springbok pack, because you don't want to be engaged in too many rucks with them if you're the All Blacks.
It just mixes it up to the extent where you're more likely to catch them out. With these two guys, they are very good quality players. They're pretty good defenders. Like I don't see, if you flip it reverse, I don't see Delindi and Am combining to shut those guys to open those guys up either. But I think what you have there in those centers is a brick wall on both sides defensively. I don't think you're going to see either side break each other down through the middle. I just don't think that's going to happen, because Crotty is a very good defender himself.
He's a very shrewd defender. He's also pretty nifty offensively. There's maybe potential for him once or twice to turn Delindi inside out and wrong foot him and get through
all season.
No, not all season from thing. And then similarly, Delindi, if he gets his angle right, he's a bigger man than Crotty, so there'll be some yards that way. But I think it'll be a ding dong battle, and I don't see any out and out line break chances for the centers. I think we'll just be more rigid and defensively responsible. So it'll fall on in other areas. Your back row and your back line, in terms of the outside backs, will be the ones looking to strike, and then it'll come down to the halfbacks putting them into those spaces. Because we haven't even mentioned Faf and his tempo that he has to set will be very, very important. Because if the All Blacks can stop, if the Springboks can win 1-2 collision in a row, but then a big All Blacks hit comes in and it's slow ball. Sometimes the Springbok forwards are a little slow getting into their shape for the next phase if they've just gone backward, and sometimes similarly Faf can be too quick for them and whip it out before they've taken shape, and that's where the rhythm can become upset. But the flip side of that is if they do get on top and go collision, 1 second ruck, 2 second ruck, that kind of quick ball speed, there's no better scrum half in the game than Faf de Klerk to just play off nine, and the Springboks are happy to do that and just roll forward.
I think that's what they'll do in terms of breaking them down. I think the Springboks are going to be just looking to straight up win collisions. It's going to be, they're going to do it with a few disguised runners, have their pods a little mixed up, but essentially it's going to be like Vermeulen carry, Etzebeth carry, round the corner, Kitsoff carry, and suck them in, trying, if you can get quick ball doing that, then very quickly the All Blacks are going to get sucked in, and there's going to be an overlap out wide, and that's the simple game that I think the Springboks.
I think Kieran Reid hit the nail on the head. You know what you're going to get from South Africa. That's just a given. So there's nothing flash about with the way South Africa play. It really doesn't.
Tough to stop. Well, sure, it wasn't. It was Mike Tyson used to say that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and the box game plan is a little like that. You may plan, you may have all these kind of game plans to stop us, but when Eben Etzebeth runs into you at full tilt, maybe the plan's out the window. He might just smash you out of the way, which is wont to happen. The All Blacks tend to be slightly wily and tricksy in terms of stopping that. They are missing a big force in Retallick in terms of engaging in that game. A lot falls on the shoulders of Scott Barrett, who obviously invited a lot more pressure on himself with the red card during the Rugby Championship. There's question marks over him. You're expecting a big performance from him. Similarly, Whitelock needs to be on the ball, and Wiley and Spoiling. They've opted for Dane Coles over Cody Taylor, both world-class options. Coles probably the slightly lighter, more nimble footballer in the wide channels, which leads me to believe that they're not trying to challenge the box there. They're going to try and move the ball around and test them elsewhere. I
think they're going to end up with, say, Artie Sevilla or Dane Coles in the wider channels.
Yeah,
and those guys are just as fast as Beck. So
and play Dane Coles in particular, he shapes like a 10. He takes the ball to the line like Pollard would. Like, he plays like a 10 a lot of the time and gets his hands free and gets offloads going. He's awesome to watch and very tough to stop. And I actually remember, I think it was Snyman who came up in the comments there off the bench, pulled in a miraculous tackle on him in that game in Eden Park earlier in the year, where it was just like, it was the classic Coles carry, and he was getting his inside arm free, and it was going to be a try until Snyman comes every inch of his massive frame spread to just about snag him, which is what you need to be doing. You need to watch him like a hawk when he's out there. There are threats all over the park.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be a fun one.
I think so. I put it in mine. I put it in my Super Brew. I have to go with it. I have to go with the passion. So I've said South Africa by one.
Of course. You're dead right. To keep it interesting, I think I called South Africa on the podcast, but in typical me fashion, I never commit to anything. I think I might have talked myself into thinking that just in that last, it's going to be tight, and just in that last 20 minutes, the All Blacks are going to get that killer play and find the win. And so I think All Blacks with a narrow win with a late try.
And that is to be said, if that is to happen, or either side, it's still not unlikely that both these sides meet again in the final. Like that, it's that kind of game. That's probably why it's less consequential for both than the France-Argentina one we were talking about before, just because it's not like one of these guys is going to be knocked out after this game. But it does make the task harder, and like plotting an easier course, simpler course to the final is something they'll both be looking to do. I'm gonna go for colour and stick with what I think, which is that the Springboks have been more impressive this year, are riding a bit of momentum, have been in Japan longer. I really do give credence to the thought that they were in Japan a week earlier. They're conditioned a bit more for the conditions over there. They're more used to it than the other teams. That's a minor advantage, but it's a few bits and pieces. And I'm going to say that the Springboks kind of smash them, and the All Blacks don't quite click, and the plan doesn't quite work, and it's all a bit
What do you think of... obviously, Felix Jones joining the back room at the box.
This was Mark's question. I think it was probably a savvy appointment. If he came obviously from Munster, where Razzie was before he was scooped up to come and save the box in time for the World Cup, which he's done a great job of doing. But Felix Jones was kind of left in charge of the backs in Munster, and in that capacity, we weren't big fans because we fundamentally believed that Munster have world-class backs in their personnel. And their shape wasn't reflecting that. They were a bit like one or two phases for the whole season. After that, they were a bit rudderless. So
I'm not a big fan of Van Graan, so...
it was him coupled with Jones. But with his responsibility is different in the context of the Springboks. He's there as a defensive advisor, not an attack coach. So that's kind of out the window. And it seems to me it's a guy that Razzie likes and trusts. And he obviously did have someone drop out. The name escapes me at the moment, but... one of the Springbok coaching faculty dropped out a while ago, so he's brought in to fill that role. Yes, Devine, that's right. Swiss
I think he's not been brought in as a defensive coach or an attack coach, but more on how to find weaknesses in the opposition.
Right.
Yeah, it's just to be honest, I don't think position. I don't think. Like, people are reading a lot into it. I don't think it's actually that big a deal. If you ask, what do I think of it? Not a whole lot. I don't think the Springboks World Cup chances hinge on him being there one bit.
No.
I think he's a guy who Razzie Erasmus liked. He likes to bounce ideas off. They're probably going to chat a bit, and he might just like having him there.
Yeah, it's another voice in the camp, which is no harm.
I don't think there's any fundamental changes to what the Springbok plan was coming from Felix Jones.
No. And at that probably a savvy enough appointment. Yeah.
So let's go to the first game on the Sunday, the big clash between Italy and Namibia.
It's a huge one.
The lights.
Yeah. Well, we've said before, and we'll say it again, like Namibia are the only team at this World Cup that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Haven't seen any tape on them. And we've been watching a lot of tape over the last 12 months and whatnot. I did hear that they beat the Southern Kings, which is obviously concerning news useful news for them. They wouldn't have wanted to lose that. But
no, listen, Namibia, they're fun.
Southern Kings.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Pinch of salt all over that.
Yeah, Namibia are going to be fun to watch them. I haven't seen them all year. I wish them the very best. I hope that they get the win against Canada. Obviously, their first World Cup win. Mm-hmm. But actually, Italy are not the old sluggish Italy they used to be in times gone by. They're actually quite a handy team. Yeah. Very sharp on the ball. Will take tries if you give it to them. Mm. So I'm thinking massive score here. If you're Super Brew talks, you could be looking at 40, 50 points really here.
Sure, Italy did put 85 points on Russia, which is it's a scoreline you're not used to. Like all of our perceptions of Italy, similar to Argentina, they're and it's reflected in the world rankings. Like Argentina are coming to this 11th in the world rankings, and Italy are like somewhere like 15th. Purely because they spend all their time outmatched in their regular tournament and playing teams above their level. But the flip side to that is that they're so adjusted to that physicality that when they meet opposition in the tier 2 level, they're the ones who are providing the shocks, because Italy are physically capable of going toe to toe with a lot of the Six Nations sides. They get let down in other areas, but the likes of Bram Stain and Negri, their whole back row, in fact, are very, very physical. Tommy Allen runs the ball very, very well. Tommaso Allen, as he is now. Jaden Hayward's had a great season from fullback, and they're starting to link up. Campagnaro, very exciting outside centre with the ball in hand. So I'd expect big win for Italy. They will blow. Namibia are waiting. Namibia have a cup final against Canada, and Canada have been very, very bad all season and are there for the taking. So I think Namibia
are going for the win against Canada. Their first win at a World Cup. I've got a feeling they're going to do it.
Oh, I think so. I think so.
If the stars all align, which they seem to be, it's there for them. But I think this weekend it's going to be Italy getting their World Cup underway. It's nice for Italy that they don't have to face either yourselves or the All Blacks early on. They can get a nice win against Namibia, get their ball rolling, and hopefully they'll slot into third place, which is cozily where they fit in this pool anyway.
Yeah, so now obviously we go to your big game of the weekend. We obviously got Ireland versus Scotland. I've been watching a lot of off the ball and quite a lot of shows. I really don't see why people are saying you're going to lose against Scotland. I really don't see it.
Well, we've done it before, even when we shouldn't have.
Well, listen, I think there are avenues for Scottish success, but I think if the game becomes about the forward pack, Ireland are going to have a little more. For all of the disruption that has been around this team this week, which we actually don't know if Carney's going to be fit, if Earl's going to be fit, it looks like neither will be fit, which shakes up the back three a little bit. But in terms of the forward pack, it's actually quite settled and just ginormous. It's a lot bigger than what the Scots bring. So if Ireland can get their line out right and attack them at scrum time, and then have their halfbacks, put them in the right areas of the field, it's a simple, ugly game. And then that's sort of frustrating some Irish journalists out there, where Scotland are sort of your pretty, very slick handling team.
A lot of people's favorite or second favorite team is Scotland. Like they play the game in a beautiful attacking manner, and Finn Russell, when he gets things right, is awesome to watch. But with all that being said,
if Ireland can put themselves in the right areas of the field, and we've actually seen this happen in many games recently, the tendency is that Scotland can't handle our physicality, and I think that's the hope. That's what we're going for this week. And not to mention Jacob Stockdale is still there, and Sexton and him have actually quite a good link going these days. And the Scottish defence in the middle of the field is actually quite ropey. Stockdale scored a great try against them in Edinburgh earlier in the year in the Six Nations, and the chances are they'll be looking to put him in a bit of space early doors as well, and some of that dodgy Scottish tackling will not be like the Darcy Graham matchup. Darcy Graham is a very exciting player on the right wing for Scotland, or even if it's Tommy Seymour. Neither of those guys are going to be great for tackling Stockdale.
No.
So I actually think matchup wise, it's decent for Ireland. I think Ireland should be confident. That said, Scotland are confident. They have all their players fit.
They did beat France. They did back-to-back wins over Georgia, where they were going in with a little bit of doubt. Like, it was a Georgia side that was a bit touted, and there was talk of them getting into the Six Nations. So it was a good monkey to get off their back, and they got a few tries together. So they have a bit of momentum. They'll definitely be targeting it. I'm remembering a couple of seasons ago, and granted this game was in Murrayfield, but it was the opening game of the Six Nations, and the same kind of talk, except it was less doubt. It was just like, right, well, we'll beat Scotland, and then next, and blah, blah, blah. And we were the ones on the podcast going like, Scotland are pretty dangerous. And like, if we're a little bit off or a little bit predictable, they'll score tries and Murrayfield's all that. And what ended up happening is, yes, we were a little bit off. We were bludgeoning. We were slow. I think the first thing that happened in that game was we passed it to Sean O'Brien, who carried short, passed it to or whoever number 7 was at the time, carried it short. I think it might have been Peter Matty, then passed it to Jamie Heasley, Stander. And then carried it short and then got turned over. So it was all very predictable, slow, and then Scotland grabbed their tries. There's an avenue for success for Scotland for sure, and it involves sticking the last pass and getting their tries.
Yeah, Scotland's attack is great, but their defence is actually a little slick. And I would say from Ireland's point of view, physically dominating them is great. It's necessary at set piece, and when we get into their 22, the round the corner bludgeon has its place. But when Ireland have the ball in the midfield, I would like to see them move it out because actually Scotland are pretty tigerish in terms of their around the fringes defence, and they have some pretty classy back row forwards and
Hamish Watson,
rows.
Barkley, two operators who are great.
Who get jackals when the opportunity comes to them. So from Ireland's point of view, actually, the dodgy defence of Scotland is in the midfield. Yeah. That's where you want to attack. Put Stockdale through holes in there, send Aki on the hit-ups, and the soft tackles will come, and that's where the tries are.
Yeah.
No, I just don't see it happening. I think Scotland's record away from Murrayfield is like 20% victory. 1 in 5 games.
It's true. It's neither home nor away when you're at a World Cup though, and they've been in camp for like that factor is kind of diminished somewhat when you come to a World Cup, but it is still a factor. You're right. Like they can't lean on their Murrayfield form at all. Though they can mine some of the great memories they've had from it, and they'll be trying to. They can go back to things like Twickenham, second half in Twickenham this year, where they were unstoppable against. They were hammered by Italy, blown away, or by England in the first half. Sorry, but then came like a steam train, and England couldn't contain them.
I remember that game was very good.
It was great fun, and like when they get a flow going, they can be very difficult.
When Finn Russell's hot, he looks like the best 10 in the world. And I just keep harking back to actually the last World Cup cycle. Scotland actually, of all the Northern Hemisphere teams, came closest to making the semi-finals. Yeah. They came within a whisker of beating Australia. A lot of their fans over there feel like they were cheated out of it by the referee. So there's quite a bit of like, they feel like they have unfinished business with this squad, with Hogg and Russell and these great players who they have where they hadn't in cycles gone by had such great talent. Yeah. So there's actually a feeling over in Scotland that they're actually due a big World Cup. And they've been talking about this game like it's the biggest game in their history, and it's this massive game. It's actually not, because it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other when it comes to the All Blacks and the Springboks in the quarters.
Yes.
But I actually think Scotland are very, very highly motivated ahead of this game. They're talking bullish stuff in their press conference. So that does throw a wrench in there. Like they're going to be physically on the level. They're going to be up for it. But Ireland do have a bit more quality than them, and especially in that tight 5. Have a lot more heft.
They also have a lot of living memory of getting the better of them, because as well as getting on top of them in the Six Nations, Leinster and Glasgow played out a final in Celtic Park for the Pro 14, and it was Leinster got the edge in that one. So there's a lot of recent memories of competitive proper games and finals that between Irish and Scottish opposition, where the Irish quality has tended to tell in recent times. And here's hoping that it is again. I'm nervous. I can see all the pictures of Scotland winning so clearly because I'm an Ireland fan, and it's my tradition to come to a World Cup seeing how can it possibly go as wrong as it ever could, and that involves blowing it against Scotland, blowing it against Japan, and then looking dodgy against Samoa, and not even looking that good against that's the worst of the worst. But putting my analytical cap back on, I think yes, Ireland on balance do have too much for the Scotland side. And I
just think if I look at just the tight 5, I look at. Obviously, they got Nell at Scotland. They got Nell.
Yeah,
I really rate him. But you got Furlong, Healy. The list just carries on and on and on. So
James Ryan and Henderson is a relatively new combination in the locks, but it is the most physical that Ireland can field. Henderson's a huge player from Ulster, and Ryan's obviously a workhorse and physical.
The avenue for Scottish success is for Nell, because Nell actually went out to Georgia, and Georgia have one of the best scrums in the world, genuinely. And he actually held up the Scottish scrum very, very well and got some plays off. He played brilliantly out in Tbilisi.
Yeah.
If you can bring that kind of form and rein in Cian Healy scrummaging, lock the Scottish scrum down, then all of a sudden you've got an even-keeled set piece, because Ireland's line-out has been so dodgy. Yeah. You could see the Scots maybe nicking a couple of them. But if Ireland can lean in to their hefty scrummaging, use a lot of that. They've got such big men and such talented scrummagers in Furlong and Healy. If they can lean into that and get on top of Nell, it's going to be a long day for the Scots.
And similarly, they don't have off the bench. Ireland have really good quality in the front row to bring off the bench at 50 to 60 minutes, where Scotland don't really have any change for it. Once Nell goes off,
Simon Bergen is going to take
Simon Bergen's going to be going in there against Kilcoyne, who looks awesome and his scrummages very well for Munster. So in that area is where Ireland and Joe Schmidt will be hoping to target and hoping to make the game about. And then trust the halfbacks who are tried and trusted. They know that game plan of physically getting on top of teams and then kicking and managing themselves into the right areas and making sure to play the game in the right areas. That'll be the plan. Yeah. We've seen it before. We've seen the blueprint of it going well before, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it all goes smoothly on day one.
Look, it's still two Northern Hemisphere sides, so I still say it's 7 to 10 points in Ireland's favour for me personally.
More than that,
not much more. No. Typically, it wouldn't. We don't tend to blow out against Scotland.
Scotland are good. I mean, I think it's actually going to be. I think both sides are going to play well, and I think what happens when both sides play well is Ireland win by about 10. But I think it's going to actually be a decent standard. I don't think it's going to be stuttering. I think both sides want to win, and Ireland will just have the edge.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
And on we go.
We'll go to the next cricket game, England versus Tonga.
This is going to be a bloodbath.
I've watched poor Tonga all year, and they haven't been out at their own level. And we've seen great Tonga sides come to the World Cup. We've seen them beat France in years gone by. This Tonga side isn't that. They have struggled in the PNC, struggled with Japan's pace and physicality, struggled with Fiji. They aren't on that level, and everything they do is pick and jam and physical and scrummaging, which in the Pacific Islands might kind of give some dividends. But when it goes up against England, Lonely Boy, you could be right. This is one of the bets for the biggest scoreline in the whole World Cup. I think the other ones are New Zealand and Springboks against either Namibia or Canada, but this has the makings of the biggest winning margin of the whole tournament. Because they'll try and play a slow physical game, Tonga, and just be met by England, who are bullish and huge and more than capable of doing that.
You would think England are going to just absolutely demolish them. I mean, it's the most. The only hope for Tonga really is, apart from a last minute typhoon.
Nil all draw. That's what our prediction. Typhoon, nil all draw. Moving on.
They would need to catch England really off the move. They would need drop balls and slow pace, and then maybe they could stay in the game for a little bit.
Yeah.
But the way England have been playing, the form that they're bringing into this tournament, they have just some phenomenal players, the likes of which the Tongans just have never encountered on a rugby pitch as their national side.
Yeah.
It's gonna the thing that surprised teams, people are ready for the physicality, and even if Tonga front up in that area, the thing that's going to surprise them is the sharpness and speed of the English passing game.
Yeah.
It's been really on point in pre-season, and even in the Six Nations before. Their passing game is crisp, and the Tongan defence more than likely will not cope with the speed of it. And they were shocked in the All Blacks. They're going to be shocked.
I don't see them playing Farrell, or I see them keeping some players off.
They'll probably go for Ford. They might even go for Pierce Francis. I think Slade needs game time, so he'll probably come in at 13.
Yeah.
But even so, I think Ford's form is pretty good. I think it's going to be that slick passing game, getting to those wide channels, and they'll probably stick Johnny May in to grab some Johnny May tries.
Well, this is it. If Johnny May starts, then he's my bet for tournament top try scorer. If he doesn't play this game, then it might be one of the other English wingers who does. It's going to be a cricket.
I think you've got to beat 8. I think it's 8's the record. Jonah Lomu and
Brian
Bennett.
Yeah, right. And I don't know if anyone's going to get that far, although stranger things have happened.
No, it's Rob Kearney, man.
But
Rob Kearney. nine try Kearney.
I don't know about that. It probably no one will reach that level. The top try scorer of the tournament, Johnny May, is a decent bet. He would need to rack up.
I think it's a decent bet.
Yeah. But the other kind of outside hope is that maybe Tonga smash someone and ruin their World Cup, because they do have big hits in them. That's the worst
guys.
Yeah. The worst thing that can happen from England's point of view is, like you say, if they start Farrell and he gets smashed, that's disastrous. But so that they probably will steer clear from doing that. But that is.
I just don't see them. Who's their number 2? George.
Jamie George.
Jamie George. I don't see them playing him. I don't see them playing Itoji. I don't see them playing Farrell.
And actually, Cowan Dickey is a perfectly
that's
good
the thing
lieutenant.
Your team can only be so weak when you have a 31-man squad.
Yeah.
And they've been prepping for that squad for ages. So actually, the guys in behind, the Cowan Dickeys of the world, they're going to be hungry to make it into the test side, and they're brilliant players. Like Courtney Laws isn't in their starting team at the moment. He'll probably play. He's a monster.
Demolish those Tongs.
You know, it's really, really tough to see it going right for Tonga.
Yeah.
So yeah, England by lots and lots.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Lonnie Boy. That's what I'm hoping for, is that they escape without the injuries. That's the worst scenario I can see from it, is just that a big physical hit and then someone's World Cup's over before it even started, and that's not what you want to see.
I must admit, I love when South Africa beats New Zealand. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to lie, but I love it when they're fully fit, no bad ref calls, no red cards, no yellow cards. Everything's like the perfect storm, and we win. Then I know
that's it. So you don't have to listen to New Zealand journos crying French ref foul and all this.
No, God.
I'm sure they feel the same.
I know they do.
They've had their own issues with Garces. I mean, it's just we'll hope for the best. We'll hope for no bad refereeing decisions, no injuries,
and let's just call them when we see them as well. Like, we're going to try and watch a few of the games live as well, and we'll call out bad refereeing decisions when we see them. But before the games, just going to hope for the best and hope that it's all flawless.
Okay, so let's do the last game for the night.
Absolutely.
Wales, Georgia.
Which is an interesting game. I think that whole pool is just fascinating.
What's interesting here is, especially from Wales's point of view, is I've actually been teetering between thinking that Wales are going to make a huge run to the final and thinking that Wales are in real trouble of going out of the pool. There's just been some sort of weird bad juju going on. I mean, you had flagged pretty early doors that they were doing this mad thing with cryotherapy in terms of their early prep out in the Swiss Alps.
So altitude cryotherapy.
Cryotherapy, all kinds of mad things. And I remember it's just something that hits quite close to home for Ireland fans, because it was something that Ireland were bigging up in advance of the 2007 World Cup, which of course went so catastrophically wrong. The guys and
couple that with the fact the guys looked poorly conditioned. For all the talk when they were on the field, they looked heavy-legged and looked like one or two lads were carrying too much weight, others not enough. And
that was the story with Wales's early preseason. They've lost 3 and 4 games. That's obviously not a great side. They went into preseason with this massive winning run and the Grand Slam and everything else. They've now lost 3 and 4. Rob Howley is now gone, obviously.
Yeah, that was the news this week. Rob Howley is out of the camp for allegedly breaking the gambling regulations restrictions.
Putting some bets on of something whatever that was. But it just feels like you can see very clearly, if Wales go out of the pool, the things that you could draw on as maybe it started
going wrong here at this point or this point. But similarly, they're a great side, and momentum is a huge part of a World Cup. And they, even in the Six Nations, they're a huge momentum team. They're the team in our association of, like, one year they'll be wooden spoon contenders, the next year they win the Grand Slam, and that is just so much down to momentum. But this is a good game for them to try and get some back and try and spark their campaign off.
That said, I think Wales are a great team. I think they have probably their best squad they may have ever taken to a World Cup. They've got some brilliant players, none less than Alan Wynne-Jones. If they can, I think the Australia game is huge. Obviously, it's very important that they don't slip up against Georgia in this game, they don't get bullied up front. But if they can stand up and hold up their scrum and get through this pool top seed, playing one of France and Argentina, they'll fancy that. And then when it gets to knockout rugby, Wales are just about as good as anybody. So that's their path to the final. But I think this game is actually going to colour a lot of it, because their scrum has been in trouble. They've got a really gnarly Georgian pack coming at them that'll be looking to target this game. And it'll be important to see whether or not they can actually deal with that, put Georgia to bed, and then kick
You
off
want to see them being fast and accurate, because teams that are fast and accurate against this Georgian side will find tries against them. The danger is that in the first 20 minutes or first 10 minutes, they're a bit too over keen or something, and then ends up a few drop balls become scrums. Scrums could, in theory, become Georgian penalties. Georgian penalties could become Georgian territory. And before you know it, if it starts like that, then that's 10 minutes that should have been Wales scoring tries and getting comfortable and getting their hands warm in Japan. Suddenly they're having to defend a Georgian pick and jam game for 10 minutes plus. That's not what they want out of this game.
And I would give a shout out as well to Georgia, just saying I've admired their rugby from afar for many, many years. I'm very optimistic about their ability to one day become a good enough side to play in the Six Nations and get bigger and better. It's their national sport over there, rugby. They love it. They live and breathe the culture. I've been looking at their team this year. I admire in some ways the way they play the game. They're very, very tight, very forward-oriented, very different from Fiji.
Yeah.
But my suspicion has been that they're just not quite on the level. They're not sharp enough on defense.
What they need is a world-class 10. They don't actually have a world-class 10 because they have a world-class pack, and they have a very decent 9 in Lobzanidze, and they have a really good fullback in Soso Matiashvili, but they're missing a 10 who can kick them into the right part of the field and get them doing their pick and jam game, which is effective against most opposition, and their scrummaging game, but just get them in the right areas first. I think they're missing 1 or 2 links, and they're not quite as slick as they need to be. And in a pool like this, there's no room for that. Like Fiji are really, really good, and then there's Wales and there's Australia. You're up against it really. So for Georgia, I'd be hopeful they can get some plays off and kind of stifle and stymie the Wales side. I do feel confident saying Georgia are probably the strongest scrum in this pool. I'm waiting to see that proven otherwise, but I think they'll cause the Australians some problems at scrum time as well. It's just everywhere else that they're missing some pretty key links, and I think Wales will have too much for them. It's just whether they do it in emphatic fashion to get their World Cup motoring and underway, or they struggle a little bit with that physicality and end up in a bit of an arm wrestle, which Georgia can do. They've done it to us, to go back to 2007 before as well. They are capable of causing problems and making the game a very slow, bludgeoning, physical affair, which is not exactly what you want in game one as well of an attritional pool. In terms of predicting it, it's the percentage bet is a comfortable Wales win, bonus point to everything else. But I actually think the greater narrative from this game is just what does both sides look like. Are Georgia going to offer enough to give teams problems in this group? Are they going to get on top of them up front? And I think more importantly, what kind of Wales are we going to see? Because it could go very badly wrong for them. But if they top this pool, they're primed to make a real go of it and to go deep into the tournament. So I think this game and the Australia game for Wales are going to colour a lot of the Australia game is really important because I think I'm confident in saying that England are going to top their group. That may change, but I think they're going to top their group, which will mean Wales need to top this pool to avoid getting England in the quarterfinals, which is the worst thing that can happen to both sides. So the Australia game is vital for that. Because if they end up smashing lumps out of each other in the quarterfinal, I back both of those sides to limp into the semi-final and lose, no matter who comes out of it. So it'll be important for Wales to try and get off to a good start and go into that Australia game with a bit of confidence and a bit of getting their hands warm, a bit of their plays going.
I think so. But
for me, I think the top 5 contenders. Let's be honest. There's only 5 contenders at the moment. Anything less than a final hasn't been a successful World Cup.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think Wales won't be too happy with the semi-final. I think Ireland might be just on account of how they've never been to a semi-final before. If they do get knocked out at that stage, they'll be like, okay, at least we've made one. But to be real with you, I think Ireland, if they get through that terrible draw of either South Africa and New Zealand, they should be looking to kick on to a final. And then likewise, South Africa and New Zealand and England all want to be there on November 2nd when the tournament wraps up.
I think anything less than a final, then that's.
Well, it's ultimately it's going to happen to 3 of those 5. That's going to be the story. Like not everyone can have a successful World Cup. There's only one champion at the end of it all. So that's all what's going to be decided. And there is, you're right in saying, for Wales, there's a path. There's a path to the final for them. It can take form. It starts by topping this group, and that starts by putting on a score against Georgia, playing some Welsh rugby, not playing some Georgian rugby, and just like going and attacking them and moving them around and scoring tries, which they know they can do. And sure, even Stephen Jones has come in to replace Rob Howley. He's coming from the Scarlets, who you're a big fan of in terms of their attacking prowess and what they can bring to the Welsh game. So hopefully we see an exciting Wales.
I think we could. I think Wales should be looking to run Georgia around and put up a score on them because the Georgian defence is vulnerable, especially when you up that tempo. That's what Wales be looking to do.
Hey guys, I think we had 1 hour 23. I think that's the shortest one we've ever done.
It's in the mix.
Felt like it flew by.
Thanks for joining me. But if you just want to tell the people that are watching how they can get hold of your channel, how they can come get in contact with you.
Absolutely. We are live on YouTube at youtube.com/Overlap Rugby Podcast. The channel name is just Overlap Rugby. You see it there on screen. You should be able to find it just by searching that.
Yeah.
We're on Twitter as well at Overlap Rugby. And if you have any formal requests for sort of collabs or guest experiences or anything like that, you can contact us on our Gmail, which is just overlaprugbypodcast@gmail.com. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Thanks
Well,
so much.
I'm sure we'll chat again during the World Cup.
We'll wait until the landscape changes a little, let some results come in, and then we'll have some new stuff to say.
I think after this weekend it might slow down a little bit, and then when it starts getting to the knockouts, then I think there's going to be so many YouTube videos going out there. It'd be shocking.
Oh, it's crazy.
I believe that.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's the whole YouTube sphere. Everyone is making content. It's just bouncing around the place.
Well, it's all been building towards it, really. Certainly in our minds. We only started at mid-cycle in 2017, our podcast and whatnot. So it's all been with the World Cup in mind, and sure, we're here now. So time for more content, but time for actual rugby game.
I think what is it? Less than 12 hours to go. So
wow! There you go.
Yes, I think we're close. Thanks to everyone for joining us in the chats. It has been really, really nice to actually have some of the comments. We're so excited for the World Cup tomorrow, and I wish you guys absolute success, and I wish everyone just happiness while they're watching the World Cup. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. It's sure to bring that.
Do us a favor and beat the All Blacks so we can meet you in the final.
Cheers, guys.
See you guys.